We are living in some crazy times. This is not a video about virus. Just a little disclaimer. Hey guys, I've tried to film this introduction a million times, so now I'm just gonna lay it all out there. At this moment in time, we are on the cusp in New York City of being placed on a shutdown. I'm an occupational therapist, and more specifically, I'm actually a trained hand therapist. And we are in a situation where we don't know whether patients should come in. We're advising people at risk to stay home, but people have had surgery or are now going to have delayed surgery or are just have been attending therapy, and this has now been cut short. So I thought it might be helpful to discuss some common diagnoses that we see in the clinic and see if there's anything that you could take home and do at home so that you don't feel like you're totally losing progress, not advancing, all that kind of thing with your therapy. If you're new here, my name is Julie. I am an occupational therapist, as I said. I'm also a mom to 2 little ones, so during this time it's particularly challenging to know how to navigate everything. If you would like to subscribe for more videos like this, I would love to have you as part of the little family, and I hope to be able to do some topics that you guys are interested in that would be helpful for you to do, seeing that life has changed so dramatically in the past week and we're not able to get to those outpatient appointments that we had scheduled. So today I'm going to be talking about one of the most common diagnoses that we see in the clinic as hand therapists, and that is a distal radius fracture or a wrist fracture. Now, a little disclaimer. Yes, I'm a certified hand therapist and I have experience in this field, but I'm not seeing you directly one-to-one, and so you need to use common sense and judgment and consult a medical provider if you feel that you need more information. I also think, you need to be smart about how you do therapy at home. At the moment, people are sort of shifting towards telehealth, virtual therapy, but in some places it's not quite there yet. So I hope that these tips will just kind of allay your fears for the moment, help you to feel a little bit more comfortable until you can kind of proceed through the next steps as per your medical provider. So a little background with regards to distal radius fractures or a broken wrist. Please know that to fracture something and to break something is the same thing. The fracture is just the medical term that we use to mean something is broken. Sometimes people will say, oh, it's just fractured, no big deal. No, fractured means it's broken. Typically with a distal radius fracture, which means distal meaning further away, radius is one of the bones in the forearm, there's the radius and the ulna. The distal one means that it's at the wrist. You could also break something more higher up, but that's something else. So we're rarely referring to a break around this area right here. Very common when people fall, typically on an outstretched hand. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as a foosh injury, which stands for fall on an outstretched hand. Pretty simple. Sometimes you can fall like this. It really just depends. But it's a very common hand injury that we see all the time. And sometimes you need surgery for it, and sometimes you don't. And sometimes doctors are not sure which way to go, and it's kind of up to patient preference, surgeon preference, that kind of thing. So we see a whole range of different types of injuries and reasons why people decide for surgery or not. What the heck was that? If you have had surgery, you're likely going to be in a cast anything between 4 to 6 weeks. In normal times, depending on the place that you go to, your cast may be removed even earlier, and a hand therapist will fabricate what we call a splint or an orthosis, which is custom made to your hand or wrist. Sometimes doctors also prescribe over-the-shelf prefabricated braces that people wear, and I will link some down below if you are interested to just see what that looks like. There are many different ways that people approach it. There's an argument that the custom one is more comfortable. It's really molded towards your hand, and it's made by someone who has specialty in this field, which is typically an occupational therapist or sometimes a physical therapist who are hand therapists and have experience. Regardless, you will experience some level of immobilization for probably 4 to 6 weeks. Well, if you have a splint versus, say, plaster Paris or kind of the post-op dressings, you'll be able to remove them, which is really great, and kind of wash your hand, maybe take it off for periods of time if you're not doing anything crazy, and then put it back on. When you go out, although now you're not really doing that anymore, let's be real, or if you feel like you might be tempted to use it picking up something, you shouldn't be doing that. But if you felt like your wrist is feeling great and you would forget about it, putting that wrist splint back on. But usually the doctor will recommend at least 5 to 6 weeks of wear, depending how you're doing, and they take x-rays to determine how you're healing. But if everything is going according to plan, what I recommend as a hand therapist and what we tell patients is that any joint that is not immobilized, so that would typically be your fingers, your thumb, your elbow, even your shoulder, we mustn't neglect those while you're immobilized in a cast. So I want you to try and do these exercises every hour, approximately 5 times, to make sure that the swelling goes out of your hand, that you can start making a fist, and that you feel as well as possible considering that your wrist is immobilized. So for ease of this video, we're going to start from the fingers and we're going to work our way up the arm. Our first set of exercises are called tendon gliding exercise, which basically means that we want the tendons in the wrist and the hand and the forearm to kind of be moving in relation to each other so that you don't get stuck and struggle to make a fist. So the first position is straight up like this. So they're in kind of a neutral position. You're not bending or extending one side more than the other. Then you're going to make them into a hook position. So I always describe it as if you were carrying a shopping bag, it would kind of be like a hook like that. That's what you're trying to do. And focus on keeping the back of your fingers straight, because sometimes what happens is people kind of do that. That's not a true hook. A hook is like this. From that position, you're going to go down and curl into your fist, just like that. So that's what you're aiming for. Then you're going to make what we call a straight fist. So this is where the fingers are now straightened versus being curled up like that. Then you're going to go into a tabletop position, and then you've completed your tendon glides. So that means you've gone through all the different positions that help the glides and the tendons of the glides, help the tendons dissociate from one another. Then with your thumb, arguably our most important finger in our hand, you don't want to forget about that. Sometimes when people are not using their hand, their thumb kind of stays stuck, and this is not a useful thumb. This is only useful for high fives, and that's about it. You want to make sure that you are moving this thumb back and forth like this, in this direction, and then if I turn my hand into this plane, like this, which is different from this. And it's kind of perceptual mind games that you're playing. The other thing you want to do with your thumb is try, as the cast permits, to touch each finger, because ultimately you want to be able to reach that thumb across the hand and back out. So let's add that one in like this. All right. If you're unsure, and this is what I always tell patients, about what this should look like, this tendon glide, do it on your unaffected hand, assuming that you only have injured one hand, and then you can see kind of what your normal looks like. You could ask somebody else to do it too, but it's good to do these together. There's also evidence to show that if you do both hands at the same time, you actually have a better result. So, just to review, we're going to do tendon glides, and we're going to do the thumb. And repeat those 5 to 10 times every hour. Typically, your hand is the thing that you're going to be focusing on the most while you're immobilized in the cast. But do not forget that your elbow also needs to be stretched out. Just a few times a day, it needs to go to full range, and then all the way back. Ideally, and you might not be able to do this in a cast, but ideally you're working towards being able to touch your shoulder. You won't be able to do that with your wrist immobilized, but that's what you're going for, so that if your wrist wasn't immobilized, you would be able to reach back. Then obviously the last major joint that can be affected with a distal radius fracture is your shoulder. So you want to make sure that you can go in all directions. That means going straight up, that means going out to the side, lifting all the way up, putting your hand behind your back, which can be very tricky when your wrist is immobilized. And now you can't really see me. Let's see if I go up like this. Going out to the side like this. And that should cover all your bases with your shoulder. Sometimes doctors give patients slings to wear to just kind of help with the weight of the arm, especially if you're in a cast. So that sling can really inhibit your shoulder. Make sure that you're turning your body nice and out, that you're doing some rolls to kind of loosen everything up, because when you're immobilized on one side, you're off balance and everything gets affected. So you want to make sure that you're just considering all of these things while you are healing. Then this video is getting pretty long, and I could talk about this all day long, as you can see. But just some final things to think about. If you notice that your hand is really swelling up, it's a lot more painful after the exercises, dial back the exercises, contact your provider. If you're able to contact your therapist by email or through your hospital online portal, do that. Just make sure that you are not overdoing it. The reason I'm providing these exercises is because you don't want to be not moving at all and then really be very stiff. But if something is swelling, if the pain is really increased, contact your doctor as soon as possible. The other thing I would say is that you need to remember that you are healing and your body is using all of its resources to heal this bone in your wrist. Take time to sleep, try and reduce the amount of stress that you have, the amount of work that you need to do. If you're doing a job where you have to type a lot, keep that in mind, that maybe you can't do exercises every hour because you're typing all the time, or try and reduce the amount of typing so that you can do your exercises in a nice calm manner so that you can reduce the stress and promote the healing. We're obviously living through a really stressful and anxiety provoking time right now, so if you are going through something like this, I'm very sorry. I know it probably just really complicates what you're having to experience, and it's really hard luck. So I am sending you healing vibes, and I hope that you start to feel better soon. Please let me know in the comments other diagnoses or conditions that you would like to talk about. There is lots more to talk about with a distal radius fracture. Once the cast comes off, what kind of exercises can you start to do to move your wrist? So if that is something you would like me to do, I'm happy to do that. Let me know in the comments and I will make that video for you. I hope you guys are having a great day considering the circumstances. One silver lining is that we get to spend more time hopefully with our loved ones. So I hope you are able to do that, and I will see you soon. Bye.